To build competence in your team members, yourself, or in your children, a very important tip is to get out of their way. Get out of the way of your children's growth, of your team's growth, and even get out of your own way for your own personal growth. So let's take a look how this is important and what does that mean. So basically, getting out of the way is empowering your children, your team members to be more responsible for what they do, empowering them to get up if they fail. And by not coming in their way or doing the work for them, you are sending them a powerful signal. You are sending them a signal that says, I feel you're confident. I feel you're capable to um, negotiate with your brother. I feel you're competent to negotiate with your team member. I feel you're competent and capable to handle the dependency issue with some other team. But if you don't get out of the way and micromanage by solving the problems for your team members or for your children, you are severely undercutting their sense of growth and their sense of competence, and you're sending them a wrong mental signal, and they'll be ever dependent on you. Only protect super life threatening situations, really bad situations that could be catastrophic for the team, could have critical business impact, by doing some of the legwork yourself. But try to empower your team as much as possible and not micromanage. At the same time, empower your kids to grow, to learn on their own by gentle guidance, but then having them make their decisions, having them have that sense of control. That feeling is amazing. That feeling of pride, of making decisions, of sticking up with those decisions. They'll have a deep sense of ownership if you get out of the way. I had a big revelation when I read this chapter. I feel I used to micromanage a lot, and I think I could do much better by empowering my team members, my family members, and not take decisions for them. By this, I'm freeing up a lot of my energy. I'm empowering them. I'm okay if we don't win or if we don't succeed in all the decisions, but as long as we learn from it. So this is a very important tip for effective great leaders, is to not micromanage, or for great parents or great teachers to not hinder children's growth. And there are very many different ways to guide for effective growth. If your kids come up to you with a problem, or if your team member is stuck, you could advise them with role playing. You could ask the right set of questions for them to think. Helping them think through is a pretty important way to solve problems and have them come up with the solutions. Ask open ended questions for next steps. Give them hints and give them the complete flexibility to choose the options that they decide to choose, even if you know those options are not the ideal options. Because now they will have a deeper sense of ownership, pride, and they'll learn from it. The best thing we can do as parents, as managers, is to listen, to clarify issues that happen, and then guide them gently and let them decide and not micromanage. Some open ended questions could be, how do you think you can handle this? And asserting that, hey, I'm sure you can come up with an answer, or you both can work out a compromise, you can negotiate with the other team, you've done something similar in the past, etc. Some of these healthy conflicts and negotiation between siblings, between colleagues at office, is a good place for team members to learn negotiation, peacemaking, and conflict resolution. Very important chapter that I read today. I'm gonna use it in a pretty big way to become an effective leader. And the biggest thing for me was few more topics that I ended up reading online from Harvard Business Review, which is around micromanagement. And there are certain signs that you can observe for yourself whether you are a micromanager. And I was shocked that I I did a lot of micromanagement, and so in the past, and there are some areas that I can still improve. And so these are 7 signs if you're a micromanager. First is that you don't trust your employees to solve problems or achieve a goal because you constantly get in their way of by asking that you be CC'd in all emails, that you ask frequent updates from them, from where they are at any given project. You correct them even though you don't need to correct them. There could be multiple ways to solve the problem. You are into too much details when you don't need to be aware of so much details. You become the bottleneck. They're constantly interrupting you, and they're depending on you to answer questions. So instead of empowering, you are becoming the bottleneck. Your workload grows while your team members' workload shrinks. So you take things up on yourself. So instead of having a deep sense of ownership, they just depend on you for all the questions and answers. And and the final one being that you only see one way of doing things, and that's your way. You don't see other ways of doing things. So these are some of the signs, and there are so many areas that I felt shocked about, like, oh yes, I still need to improve. So this was great learning for me. And some of the great tips that I read from this Harvard Business Review blog, signs that you're a micromanager, also led me to another reading, which is what are some of the traits of a great manager. So a great manager builds trust, and trust is basically on 2 foundations. A team member will trust you and depend on you only if they think that you care for them. And if you deeply care for them, then that feeling is not something that you can make up. They can easily sense that you truly care for them and their growth, or you don't. And they'll only trust you if they think you're competent. Can they trust you to manage their professional career? Like if you're not good enough technically, or if you're not good enough from your material, if you're teaching your students, then you will not have trust built. And without trust, you cannot really influence. So a great manager focuses on trust, which is improving their own personal competence and a deep sense of caring for their team members. That's the number one thing. Second, um, a great manager understands the impact of micromanaging. So we saw various signs. We saw what would happen if you get in the way, but there's huge impact on productivity. The team member doesn't feel a sense of ownership. The team member burns out along with the manager. Manager burns out too because he has so much that he's taken on. The morale of the team goes down because of lack of ownership, lack of sense of achievement. So a great manager focuses on empowering and not micromanaging, and focuses most of their time on larger strategic issues that are super important that the team members might not have the time to think about. And a great manager focuses on the what and not the how. So he doesn't define like how he wants things to be done. He just defines a high bar of goal that we need to achieve and why it's important, but not how we're gonna go get it. And the most important being that the manager who's effective knows to solve for bottlenecks. He doesn't solve for non-bottlenecks. If there's a bottleneck, he goes and attacks it. But at the same time, he doesn't become a bottleneck himself. He delegates for things that he can delegate. The other big piece that I learned was setting people up for success is an important one. Like if you have a project that can be scaled without you by training your people, giving them the right set of resources and support to succeed without you, then that's set up for success. So that's something that we need to do as effective managers. And finally, when we achieve certain things, we should celebrate those wins. We should notice them and have specific praises, which we'll see in the next chapter. Chapter whole dedicated around noticing and achieve and providing concrete appreciation for things that happen. And finally, the manager who is an effective manager knows that there are bigger parts of his team members that need to work together. So he does things that brings the team together. He does things to manage himself and his career so that he constantly grows, because without him growing, the team will not grow. So he has a framework to set personal goals for his growth. He gets feedback, seeks training and mentorship support, builds on his own strength, and regularly reflects on progress on how would someone who's an effective manager do certain things, and makes course corrections. And finally, a great manager also builds influence across different teams, because on a larger project, you will work with many different teams, and it becomes super essential to have influence across various teams. And so, an effective manager is constantly working on building his network of connections and influence across teams. So that was some of the great learnings from chapter 5 of this book. Great book. Overall, do not micromanage and get out of the way for your children's growth. Give them the sense of pride, control, and ownership. Guide them with open ended questions. Send them the right signal mentally, the feeling that you send out when you, before you even talk to them, that you feel they're competent and capable, and empower them. And it's okay for them to learn from their mistakes. Okay, thanks.